Welcome, Matt. Thank you for sitting down with me today and talking for a little bit. I'll have you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is Matt Clay. I am 21 years old. I was born and raised in Columbia, Missouri, and I have almost lived here throughout my 21 years. And yeah.
All right, we're off to a great start. Cool. Okay. Um, so, um, Previously, for the first episode that I did of this, I sat down with your father, Dennis. Lovely guy, quite a character, and he clearly loves you to death, and that was something that I left with, very touched by. Was the way that he talked about you and his love for your family, as part of it. So anyway, all of that is to say, I wanted to do this follow up interview and just sit down and talk to you and get sort of your perspective and your side of a lot of the stories that Dennis shared with us, as well as stuff that either he doesn't know about or just it's stuff you want to talk about. So
Yeah.
let's dive right in. Let's talk a little bit about like your experience living in Colombia so far, and yeah, start there.
Yeah. So I was born here, like I said. I was born at Boone Hospital. Growing up here, I was going to one of the elementary schools, Lee Elementary, which is actually now called Locust Elementary. Um, and it was pretty good. I mean, I have always really loved Columbia. We moved away briefly as I got older, later down the line, and I always wanted to come back because it was a place that I knew and it was a place that I was comfortable. Um, and there are just so many different things here that I've always been drawn to in terms of just the community and like local aspects. And so I grew up here. It was me and my dad and my mom. We lived in a small duplex with a family friend right next door. Eventually, we moved out into the actual house that I remember growing up in, which was on Clark Lane. I used to call it the greenhouse because it was painted green. And that's where I have the most fond memories from my childhood while living in Colombia. Though I will say a lot of my memories of being a kid, they're kind of sporadic. I have a handful of good ones that are just very ultra specific, and then I also have a handful of really bad ones that are also like ultra specific. So I don't know that there's much I can say in the term like ways of like growing up as a kid here, but definitely as I've gotten older and as an adult, it's become something entirely different for me. I work at a local grocery store in town, and that has given me a lot of connections within the community, ones that I wouldn't have otherwise. And it has just kind of sprouted into this thing of like, I can't go anywhere without seeing someone I know. It's kind of how it is. Like my friends made a joke and they're like, "You're Mr. Columbia. Like that's who you are. You can never leave." And it's like, yeah, kind of. Like I don't know how long I will be living here, but it is such a comfortable place for me where like I know what's going on, I know where everyone is, and like just the local aspect of it and the community aspect of it is something that I don't want to give up anytime soon.
Sure,
So,
sure.
yeah.
What was it about the greenhouse that made such an impression on you at a young age?
I think, part of it was like that was the house I grew up in. When I was a kid, I the best way I can describe it is like there were these times when I was a kid, like driving home or to school, like home from school or to school, where I remember being like, I'm going to be driving on this road when I'm an adult, and I'm going to look back at this exact moment, and I'm going to be like, oh, remember when you were a kid and you were living here? And I like that's just kind of what I thought it was like this is where I'm going to be until I'm older, and it was a place that I just loved so much. We had a big backyard. I had a cat and a dog growing up, and it was also one of those things where it's like looking back, when you have dreams and you're like thinking about a house that you were in, it's like kind of warped and weird. And I think about my house when I was a kid, and that's just kind of what I imagine is like I don't have a perfect memory of it, but I know that I did really love it for as long as I did live there. And I mean, there's like there are some the good memories that I remember. You know, me and my sibling. This was before youngest was born. There's three of us. Me and my sibling Gigi. You know, we would play outside all the time, and it was just a very like artsy, messy house where my dad would cook big meals for all of us, and like it was just kind of like that was when things were like really normal when I was a kid. I mean, they never were normal, but I think that was the more like normal part of my childhood. So it's definitely something that I hold on to.
I remember, speaking with Dennis about this time. This is when his relationship with your mother was kind of starting to become challenging.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you remember or care to share about memories of that or feelings that you felt?
Yeah. So, oh gosh, I mean, there were always issues with my mom. It was like I remember the very first time I ever got in between one of their arguments, and this is before my sibling Gigi was ever born. So it was kind of an always thing. I mean, not always, but it definitely had been there since as long as I can remember. When it started to get really bad was around the time that we moved to Grove, Oklahoma, which was probably the worst thing that they could have ever done. I know he got a new job. I was furious. It was yeah, I think I had just started. We had just maybe started. It was my 5th grade year of elementary school. Just started. And it's like, okay, we're packing up. We're moving to buttfuck Oklahoma. And it was like, wow, okay, this is one. Oh, I'm so excited. Oh, like the school I went to felt like a prison. It was horrendous. I hated it. But it was this weird thing where they were like kind of happy sometimes, but then it was like they were also fighting. I just remember when it really picked up, and it was around, I think, the same time I kind of broke my leg. I broke my leg in 5th grade roller skating. And my mom would spend all day on the back porch drinking vodka and smoking cigarettes and like being on her phone. And my little sister Scout had just been born. She was probably, oh, she was not that old. I don't know how old she was, but she was baby still, like not walking around. And I was in 5th grade. And my mom would leave Scout with me throughout the day, and I would lay on the couch with a broken leg and take care of this baby. And then my dad would come home and be like, like what's going on? He would get home really late. They would get into fights. I would be in bed some nights, and I would just like hear them screaming. In 5th grade for me, it was to the point where I had actually packed a bag that I hid in my closet and was like, if I ever need to run away in the middle of the night, if things get so bad that I need to run away, this is what I'll do, It was kind of at the point where with them fighting, it was just kind of unbearable. I remember it was sometime in between then, maybe it was after we were leaving Grove, Oklahoma, or while we were getting there. They were fighting in the car on the side of the highway for whatever fucking reason. And I remember Gigi and Scout being in the back seat, and I was like, well, if I grabbed Scout and I grabbed Gigi's hand, I could probably carry one of them, and we could bolt into this field that we're right next to. If it meant we could get away, like we could be okay, and I could make it okay. So that's kind of what it was for me. Was I wanted more than anything to escape. I used a lot of like methods for that, like reading books. I was really wanting to do that all the time. I got really into like the Percy Jackson series when I was a kid, and like that's what helped me. It was an escape for me. I would like watch as many like fantasy TV shows as I could, because it was just like, this is all I have. And on top of all of this, I didn't have any friends where we were living. I didn't have anyone. My mom would force me to hang out with people that I did not want to hang out with, and got mad at me when I said I did not want to hang out with them. So it was a really challenging time. And what I remember from most of that is just like screaming matches with each other, and then also like the private conversations my mom would have with me where I was like, man, it sucks that I broke my leg. You know, I'm really sad. I'm in 5th grade. I'm a kid. She was like, well, did you know that they used to skin children in World War II and use their skin as lampshades? So you shouldn't complain. And that's the kind of treatment I got as a kid.
It's very morbid.
Yeah, it was. I remember a couple years later, I think it was only a year later, maybe a year and a half. We were learning about World War II in class, and I had a breakdown, and I started crying because all I could think about was like how my mom talked to me when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it was just kind of stuff like that where it was like, why are you saying this to a child? You know, but there was always a lot of that. She had a lot of issues and kind of still does. So it was not fun, to say the least. To summarize all of that, it was never a good time. It was always kind of like walking on eggshells and feeling like you were just wanting to survive the night and kind of really hoping that it didn't get as bad as having to run away. And the cops were only called a few times while we were living in Oklahoma. When we moved to Joplin is when things really started to pick up. And I had stopped talking back to my mother for a time, and then I had started again just because I don't know, at some point you get fed up with it, right? And as a kid, it was really hard because it's like, well, this person is supposed to be my mother, but I've also never felt safe with her. And so it was the summer before my 6th grade year. It was summer going into fall, actually. And we had just moved to Joplin, Missouri. There were a handful of fights that they had gotten into. There was one time where she was threatening to light herself on fire in the backyard and had poured gasoline all over herself. There was another time that she had called the cops. No, we had called the cops because she had pushed me. And when the cops got there, she was saying that the bruises on her arm were because my dad was beating her. And I jumped in the middle, and I was like, that's not true. That is not what you told me, in front of the cops. And the look she gave me, oh my God, she was pissed. She was so fucking mad with me. And I don't remember all of it, but the big night was when I came home from school. I walked home, and it was raining. I had a jacket on. I made a friend at school. It was my 6th grade year. I made a couple new friends. I'd just gotten their phone numbers. I was really excited. I was going to go home, do homework, text my friends. I get home. The door to my house is wide open. My mother is home. She is drunk, asleep on the couch with my baby sister Scout. My mother's way of cleaning was to take everything out and put it everywhere and then sort through the mess. And so the house was trashed, to say the least. Gigi was in the kitchen, which I'm 5 years older than her. So if I was in 6th grade, she would have been maybe in like 1st or 2nd. She was making herself a sandwich and using a plate that was on a step stool because the counters were completely covered in junk. I can't really remember how it happened, but my mom woke up and she started getting mad at me because I had a jacket on inside. She was like, take that off. It's like, no, what are you talking about? And I was like, I'm going to go upstairs and do my homework. And she was like, no, give me your stuff. And so she tried to take my things away from me for some reason. I can't even remember the reasoning, just that I wasn't allowed to have anything and I had to go upstairs because I was in trouble. And she was extremely drunk. But that got us into a physical altercation of, I was like, no, this isn't how this is going to go. And I pushed her back. I ran outside. I was like, I'm going to call the cops on you. She had taken my phone. I had gone to the next door neighbor. I begged them to call the cops. It was a woman that answered. She was like, I don't actually live here. And I was like, okay, that is not helpful. Like, thanks, great, awesome. I'm a child in the rain. Like, okay. Run back to the house. I lock her outside because I'm fucking terrified. During all of this, right before, when we start getting into the fight, I tell my sibling, Gigi, I'm like, you need to go upstairs. We had this relationship growing up, which was like, if mom and I are ever in a fight, you listen to me. Like, that's how it was I instilled kind of this, like, we are not safe. You need to know that I am trying to protect you. I do not trust our mother. She does not have our best interests. So I was like, you need to go upstairs. My mom was like, don't. And I was like, do you remember all of those conversations I've had with you? Every single one. That is right now. And she went upstairs, and it was, I think that's something that has really stuck with her. Because she heard all of it. She heard my mom call my dad when I locked her outside and say, Matt's gone crazy. Matt's doing crazy things and attacking me. And I remember unlocking the door, screaming into the phone, being like, it's not true, Dad. It's not. And then she barges in. I think I had just gone outside, and I was like, I'm going to fucking call it quits. And I'm sitting on the curb, and I'm just getting drenched in rain, and there's nothing I can do. And my mom comes outside, and she's like, I am going to call the cops on you, and they are going to take you away, and you will never see this family again. And in that moment, I was like, this is the only way the cops are going to show up. So do it. And I didn't say a word, and I sat there, and she, sure as shit, called the cops. And they see a crying child in the rain who's like, my mom is fucking drunk and is like trying to hurt me. And it takes 2 cops to pull her out of the house, and they have me sitting in the back seat of the vehicle just waiting. And for a while, because it took a minute, and I thought for sure she was convincing them that, I was insane and that they had to take me away somewhere. And as soon as the second car pulled up, it was like, it's done, it's over. And that was the peak. So that was the peak of my childhood with my mother.
Is there, at the time, did you have any sort of hope that your relationship with your mom could be repaired, or?
Sorry. Continue.
No, please.
I mean, no, absolutely not. At the time, I hated my mother. It was something where it was just like, for years, it was just this thing that we had to deal with for some reason. Again, even in the greenhouse, like I was talking about, my parents would get into fights, and we would go stay at hotels. That's the kind of fights that they would get into, was we can't stay at the house for the night. My mother is carrying a butcher knife around the house. That was just okay, I guess this is how we live, and at some point I was like, I don't think this is right, actually. And I really despise this person. And I don't know what, besides everything that she did, there was just something deep down that irked me about her. It's this weird way that she would look at the world, and she was going on these monologues always when it wasn't a weird fight, where she would lecture me and be like, you're going to be a leader of this revolution, and there's this light inside of you. It was this very weird spiritual thing going on with her that as a 10-year-old, I had to be like, girl, this is crazy. You need to chill out a little bit, because I am 10 years old, and this makes me feel weird,
Sure.
And so with what happened with my mother, it was something where, I was furious. I hated her. I thought that, after she was gone, it was there was finally quiet to the house. The house was finally quiet. The house was finally quiet for once in our entire lives.
It had never been that way. That way.
I remember talking to my dad that first week that she was gone, because when my dad got home after the police dragged her out of the house that day, he was like, I'm filing for a divorce, And the following week, I remember being like, is it quiet to you? He was like, yes, yeah. And I think that was the first time that in a couple of years that it felt just kind of at peace. And I mean, for that, it was well, yeah, why shouldn't I hate you? And, Gigi is kind of the same way, but
Your grandmother?
Gigi, my younger.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, yeah.
My bad.
Where she definitely holds a lot of anger towards our mother for everything that's happened. I mean, the other part of this is that there are the things that happened to me as a kid, And there are the things that I have been told about and I have learned growing up, and I've learned more of the story of who she was when I was young and unaware. And when you have those things, you kind of piece together what it really looked like. And for me, it's definitely changed, where when I was younger, I was like, I'm never going to see her again. I don't want to, I don't want any kind of relationship with my mom. And it's still kind of that, but it is something where it's like, I understand who you are as a person. I understand how addiction affects people. I understand how mental illness affects people. And like all of these actions combined, it is this kind of like house of cards that she has built herself, of like lies and manipulating and being a really fucking bad person. And it's unfortunate that that's how it turned out. It really, really is. And I wish to some degree that I could have a relationship with her. But the time is so far gone for that, where it's like, I'm 21. I don't need a mom. That wasn't something that I really had growing up. It's not something that I need now. And so I spoke to my mother only a handful of times. I've only spoken to her a handful of times over the past couple of years.
When's the last time?
The last time was I texted her because it was like notes that she was sending me, and I sent one letter back, and then I texted her recently. She had gotten mad about, she was wanting my dad to like release her of any like responsibility of kids and the whole like child support aspect. She was like, I want this gone, And my dad was like, fucking no, like you have 3 of them, you can't, like, no, sorry, that's not how that works. And she went on this long tangent. It was to my dad, my grandmother on my father's side. I think my uncle on my dad's side was thrown in there for some reason. I don't know why the fuck she texted him. He has nothing to do with any of this. No offense, Ben. Love you. And then maybe my uncle on my mom's side, so my mom's brother. It was a weird mix of people in this group chat. I was not included. She does not have my phone number. And she sent this long text, and it was like, you're not doing this. You're stepping on the neck of a dying woman. Because 2 years ago, we found out she was diagnosed with cancer. So you're stepping on the neck of a dying woman, and Dennis is a monster. I hate him. He's spun this narrative of lies, and it made me so mad. He sent me the screenshots, my dad did. And I texted him, I was like, fucking give me her number right now. And I sent her a very long text, which was basically along the lines of, you say you are a dying woman. You are a dying woman who wants to leave her children with fucking nothing. You don't want any responsibility for the 3 kids that you've had, and you've completely abandoned. Anything that you have done and anything that has happened to you, it's all been your own fault. No one is to blame for this but you, and you have consistently proven that you will do everything in your own power to avert any of that blame onto my father. And it's like, yeah, my dad wasn't a great husband, probably, but also, like, at the end of the day, who stepped up? It was not her. And that has been continually proven. But it was a very long, nasty message. Well, not nasty. I'm very well worded when it comes to writing. But it was a very long message. I blocked her number immediately after. She texted me back, and because you can go and look and see when people, still text you. And I remember I looked at it, and it made me feel kind of bad for a moment. I did. I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said all these things. One of her things was like, well, I took the plea bargain whenever you were a kid because I didn't want you to have to lie on the stand. Because I did put my hands on her. But I remember I talked to my boyfriend about this. And he was like, how far do you have to push an 11-year-old for them to, like, hurt someone? how far do you have to like mentally berate someone before they're like, I'm going to hit you back, actually. And so most of my mother's response was incoherent because she's also a drug addict. But the parts that were coherent, it was just this mess of like delusion where you're like, I do remember like literally anything that's happened, because unfortunately I do. I was raised this way and I remember all of it. I think around the time when we were living in Oklahoma, I was not that close with my dad, but that was mostly because he was gone all the time. Not all the time. He would work a lot, and so it was not very often I felt like I got to see him. Then when all of the stuff with my mom happened, it changed things a lot. You know, then you only have one parent in the house and you have 3 kids, so obviously he's going to be spending a little bit more time with us. And I think for the most part, it was good. It was challenging because around the same time is when I started coming out to him, which I had watched his interview. He said that I came out as queer first. That is not true. I came out as an atheist first. I felt the need to because my mom would force us to go to church. And I was like, oh my God, I don't want to do this anymore. And I really hope my dad doesn't make us start doing this now that we're like, he divorced her. So I had to be like, Dad, please don't take us to church. I am actually an atheist. And he was like, I don't care, so am I. And I was like, oh, okay. And so just kind of like dipping toes in the water of like, okay, how far can I like tell my dad about stuff? Which some of it I wasn't even aware of, like, just yet. I ended up, I feel like maybe a month or 2 later, I came out to him as queer. And he was like, it was just kind of like okay, that's great, you know, like, that's fine. And then it was New Year's that year that I came out to him as trans. And I did it over text. The other 2 conversations were in person. That one I did over text. I was really scared of that. And he reacted the exact same way, which was, you know, like, I'm here for you, I'm proud of you, and I want you to do whatever it is that you need to feel comfortable. And so it was really good in those ways. Obviously, as I got a little bit older, we did start to butt heads a little bit more. And I think part of it was just the stress of having to raise 3 kids. And then it's like, I'm in high school. Now my grades actually matter. There are a lot of things that I didn't really get to do that it was hard for, I think, both of us trying to navigate how to do it, which was like driving a car. I did not get my license until I was 19. I love my dad. He did not teach me. He maybe took me driving twice, and that was about it. And both of those times were horrible. He's a horrible teacher when it comes to driving.
Stick shift or automatic? Was that
Automatic.
part of the...
Yeah, automatic, and he's just a very antsy guy, and that's okay, but like, I don't want to learn how to drive a car from him. It was not fun. Whatever, it's fine. And then also there were a couple of arguments while I was in high school, and it was never that bad. I mean, it was just my dad being like, you need to make a life plan, and I was like, you're too accepting of everything, so I'm going to be rebellious and be like, no, I'm not, you know. He really wanted me to go to college. That was another big thing that I felt was like just waiting for an like argument to happen, where it was like, I don't have the money to go to college and I don't want to. And during all of this with COVID happening too, it felt like I was dealt a shitty hand, but I probably could have handled it better. But I had this whole plan to like graduate early, yada yada. But regardless, I mean, it was great having my dad be close to me in the way that was at times felt kind of like just a friend. I think he, in some ways as a father, I think there are different things he could have done, but I don't ever hold anything against him, because also as I've gotten older, and the more I've learned about my dad, and the more I've learned about like his relationship with my mom and how both of their stories kind of turned out, it's something where I see my dad as a person and not just my father. I see him as Dennis Clay, and I see everything that he's done, and I cannot be mad at another human for making mistakes, you know? And so it's something where like I've told him that too, where I'm like, listen, you fucked up a couple of times when I was a kid and even when I was a teenager, but it's not something that I'm ever going to be like holding a grudge against you for, you know. You are a person and I see you in that way. And I think it's definitely helped my relationship with him. Not saying that, but just thinking that and like seeing him as that. And it's helped me with a lot of past arguments that we've had. And also kind of talking about them again now. There was one argument we had that we never spoke of. We had never spoken of it until I think maybe a couple months ago, where I was like, do you remember that really bad fight we had? And then we never talked about it again. He's like, yep, I do. And I'm just like, okay, cool. And like, that was it. So overall, great. Overall, I have a wonderful relationship with my dad, and I do really, really love him. And he has been one of my biggest supporters, besides my grandma, that is. So I cannot say a single bad thing.
How often do you see him these days?
It's definitely been more often. When I first kind of moved out, I was really mad at him at the time. But again, looking back, it's something where it's like, I wasn't actually that mad at you. It was more so the girlfriend you had I hated. So I just wanted to move out. But it's been a lot more recent. And that is not just because I do laundry at his house. It is also because my boyfriend also really likes my family, and my family really likes him, which is not something that I've had a lot of experience in, like bringing a partner over. And then also them like actually engaging with my family members, like how someone engages with my little siblings is a big decider for me on whether or not I like someone or care to talk to them. It's like, okay, you get along with my little sister Scout and you're playing Pokemon with her, then you're probably pretty cool. I can't lie. And so I try to go over there more often, and also I swing by his job because he works at LaBao, which is a restaurant downtown. And we also try to call fairly often too. He does this thing where he texts me and he's like, call me when you get a second. And I'm always like, oh my God, someone's dead. The sole provider for my two younger siblings. Like, oh my God. And then I call him and he's like, hey, just wanted to see what was up. You want to come over for dinner? And I have to be like, bro, can you not do that? He did that today. He was like, call me when you get a second. And I was like, okay, I will. And I like called him immediately after. And I'm like, what's up? And he's like, okay, do you want a ticket to LCD Sound System? All you have to do is mow my lawn. And I had to be like, yes, yeah, okay, yeah, sure. So even if we don't get to see each other in person very often, which is at least once every week or every other week, then we do make the effort of calling each other. And he also just sends me random links and stuff over text. So,
what's your relationship like with your siblings, Gigi and Scout?
Scout, unfortunately, I wish it was a little bit better than it is. I think having a younger sibling and you're 10 years older than them it's kind of hard. She has a phone now, thank God. Love when kids get technology. But she has a phone now, so she's been pretty adamant about keeping in touch over text, which is nice. She'll just text me and she'll be like, hi, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm good, Scout, how are you doing? And she's like, I'm playing video games. I'm like, awesome, that's great. And yeah, but when we were younger, we were not nearly as close. I was always a lot closer with Gretchen. And, you know, part of that was because of everything we went through as kids. But also and this is from my dad and my mom telling me this. when I was a kid, I begged them to have another child. I was like, please, God, give me another one. I want to have a friend. Um, and that's kind of why they had Gretchen. And so when she was born, um, the first time I ever saw her, I think I just like maybe started crying. Maybe I didn't though, but regardless, I turned to my dad, and the first thing I ever said about my younger sibling was, "She's perfect." And so it has always kind of been this like deeper connection I think that we've had. More recently, I took both of my siblings to Ashland Pride with me and my boyfriend, and I also I need to be a little bit better about talking to Gigi, just because one of our more recent phone conversations was just kind of the trials and tribulations of being a high schooler and having like shitty friends. And so I started crying whenever she was telling me about it, because I was like, I remember being your age, and I remember what it's like to have like horrible falling outs with friends, and you think it's the end of the world because you don't know anything else. But I talked her through it, and I I think it is something where I'm very proud to be the older brother of two very cool kids who, I'm not gonna lie, it's partially because of me, because I told them what to do and what not to do. But, it is nice being relied on in that way for like, I am here for you. And I think they both know that and always will. And so very good, strong relationships with both of them. Scout a little less, and I would like to change that, but I also know that they have each other. And so I think that Gretchen's kind of taken on the same role that I had, but a little bit less intensity in terms of, what we went through as kids.
How long had you been thinking about these discussions with your father, and also even with yourself, kind of like realizing, okay, this is who I am and this is why I want to be?
Yeah.
And I know I'm asking a bunch of questions, I think.
No,
but
no.
ultimately, I'm just going to turn the time over
I
to
think
you.
I can wrap it all up.
Yeah, hit it.
So, I mean, I think a big part of it for me is when I was a kid, I was not thinking about any of that. It was not a thing for me. I like growing up, it's like, okay, I'm a kid and I'm playing in the mud, and like gender roles are not a thing that I'm concerned about by any means. It was something where I can pinpoint a couple times where I was younger and I was like, man, it would have been really nice if I was born a boy. And then I was like, meh, guess I won't think about it. And that's kind of what it was. I remember the first time I ever thought of the word lesbian, I'm pretty sure. It was when I had a friend over and she was leaving. I was saying goodbye. And in my head, I was like, oh, I could say I love you, but would that make me a lesbian? And I like looking back at it, I'm like, did I even have any concept of what a gay person was at the time? Like, I don't think I did. I think a lot of that was not something I ever like cared to think about. I pushed it off the table. I remember when my mom was pregnant. I think this is when she was pregnant with Gigi, and I remember being, oh God, dude, I have to do this? This sucks. I don't want to do anything like this ever. And then I was like, well, that's a problem for later. I mean, not going to think about it right now. And that's just kind of what it was. I think a big part was like, looking back, I didn't really have crushes on anyone. Like, for some reason in elementary school, it was like all these kids being like, oh, I have a crush on this boy, or I have a crush on so-and-so. And for me, it was just like never really a thing. It was just kind of like, oh, I don't know what's going on. And I, again, do not really care. I have other things I'm concerned about. But as I got older, I obviously started thinking about it a little bit more. The internet is definitely what was a part of, like figuring out who I was. I saw things online where it was like, this is what it is to be a gay person, and I like thought about it and I was like, huh. At the time though, I also started getting a really big crush on this girl that I went to school with. And once again, this was in 6th grade. But it's hard when you're younger and you're a queer person, or you think you might be, and you also have never had a close relationship with someone. That has been something throughout, I think, a good chunk of my like teen years that I've also discovered is like what it means to be really close with someone, and like you start to kind of blur that line of romantic and platonic feelings because it's just like you've never had that before. You don't know what it is. Looking back though, I definitely had a like huge crush on this girl, so it's fine. But that kind of started the like, am I gay quiz, and it was like, well, I don't really know, but like, I don't think I care. So at the time, I think what I really came out to my dad was I came out as pansexual when came out as queer, which people have a number of meanings for that. The definition is just like it is not based upon any gender. You like can be attracted basically anyone. A lot of people say pansexual is the attraction to men, women, and transgender people. That is not what you say. Trans people should always be included in men and women already. So it was just kind of this thing. Like, oh, well, I guess I just kind of like whoever, and eventually I think that kind of changed into being bisexual, which I can't remember why. I think I was just like, I like the term bisexual more, into like queer, into like gay, into just, it's kind of back just to queer for me now. But around the same time is when I started seeing people talk about like being transgender or being genderqueer or being just like androgynous. And I remember seeing those things and being like, wait, that's a fucking option? Whoa, wait, I thought I just had to live like this forever. Whoa, like it kind of was like mind blowing. I was like, oh, wait, like I have free will and I could just do this, And it was something where like when I realized that, it kind of like all clicked into place where it was like, oh, like, no, you don't have to be like miserable all the time with who you are. And maybe there is also like maybe a little bit of an explanation for it. And it's like why you feel so uncomfortable. And like going through puberty, especially, I was like, oh my God, I'm a monster. I'm a freak. And this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And so, yeah, I mean, for that time in my life, it was just kind of like, oh, like there are other things that I could do. And so I was kind of like playing around with a couple different things. I like before I came out to my dad, I was like trying to figure out like, is there a name I want to go by? I remember I went to this like concert recital. I was in choir at the time. And I remember someone being like, well, what's your name? And I was like, I'm just going to make up something on the spot because I can do that. I have free will. I can just lie and just say this is my name now. Like literally just to test things out. I remember when I did come out to my dad asking to go get a haircut, I was like, I want short hair now. And one of the big things was someone came up to me at school and they were like, are you a girl or a boy? And I just remember being like, why do you care? And it was like the most freeing feeling. I turned to my friend at the time and I was like, that's fucking awesome. I don't want people to know if I'm a boy or a girl ever. This is the dopest thing ever. And yeah, so I don't know. It was just kind of this like, oh, I can like do what I want and there's like no reason why I shouldn't be able to. And
very empowering feeling.
Yes, indeed. And that later kind of changed into a little bit more fear when I started high school and I was going to a much bigger place of, like, oh no, I do want to fit in. I don't want people to think I'm weird. And at the same time, I was also kind of scared of my dad. Like, although he was very accepting, scared of him ever, being like, well, that's not what a guy would do. And so I was very like headstrong with the like, I'm a boy, he, him, like, this is what I'll do to prove this. And like, thank God for COVID, because when that happened, it was like, oh, wait, I can once again do whatever I want, like when I was a kid and I was just discovering it. And so, and especially I've been on testosterone for, well, like 3 years almost now. Especially now when I never get misgendered. people always are just straight to assuming, like he, him for my pronouns. It's definitely more freeing now because it's like, okay, well, now I can put a skirt on and I can do whatever I want. My pronouns are like he, him, or he, they, but like even more so now, it's like, well, you're not going to say anything, so who cares, And for that, it's been a very freeing experience. I've had a lot to learn when it comes to my own identity and kind of like how I carry that with me. It also like goes into my political beliefs, which is that like whatever someone's doing, as long as they're not hurting you or themselves, literally who gives a shit, And along with that, I am very open about it because it's like, I want people to see me and be like, that is the weirdest fucking person I've ever seen. And then for maybe a minute, just a second, they can think of something like bigger and outside of their own little bubble. And so it's like, yeah, it is a very freeing experience. And it's been a very long road of like kind of getting to this place where I feel comfortable enough to be like, yeah, I mean, I won't bind today. I haven't gotten top surgery. Some days I'm like, I won't bind and I'll wear a tank top and I will have my chest out. Like, I do not care. But I also think that I have been given such a good community and I've met so many people who've kind of like paved that way for me as well. I've definitely met some older transgenders that I'm like, oh no, like that's what I want to do. Like that's exactly what I want to do.
Is there still like, even though you now feel much more comfortable and free, are there still challenges at all that you either wish were easier or you're currently navigating through? Just,
I mean, there's the basics of like where I go and who I interact with. Like, I'm usually very optimistic about it. A lot of people approach me and they say the most crazy things that I think they just assume that I'm going to agree with. And I'm just okay, yeah. Like, people are very open and vocal to me, but not in a bad way. But there are places where it's like, this is kind of off limits, where like even this is the first time this happened in a while. I was walking my trash to the curb the other day and I got called a faggot, a queer, and a bitch boy. All in the same breath. And I told my dad about it, and he was like, at least they didn't misgender you. And I had to be like, that's true. You're not wrong. But, I guess...
We're not talking about the silver lining here. We're
like,
talking about what happened.
Make a good point. Not what we're talking about. So, there's that. There is the fact that, like, as much as it's like, yeah, I will draw attention to myself and I do look like a freak, it's also like, oh, and I look like a freak, So it's just kind of, it's very like, you got to play it safe sometimes. Like, even this weekend, I'm going out to a bigger city and it's like, I'm probably going to bring a taser with me. I'm also probably going to bring my police baton with me. Like, that's part of the challenge. The other challenge is obviously like medically transitioning. That's hard. I give myself a needle injection every 2 weeks of testosterone. And it is like, I'm on the max dose that you can put an adult on. And it's great. I also cannot give myself my own shots. Surprisingly enough, with all the piercings and tattoos, I'm actually terrified of giving myself shots. So it's kind of a challenge to try to figure out which one of my friends around town or outside of town can administer my medication to me. And then there's the aspect of like top surgery and just like general body dysmorphia. I have wanted to get it for a very long time. I have no idea what out-of-pocket cost is going to look like. I had a friend recently get it, and he said out-of-pocket was only $3,000. I think he has a little bit better insurance than I do. So it's like stuff like that, where it's like, okay, well, this is something I would love to have. I don't know how realistic, in terms of right now, it is. A legal name change. That's something that I haven't even done. So it's like, that's a whole process. You have to get it published in the newspaper for like a week straight of like, this person was named this and is now changing their name to this. And it's like that. I don't want to go through all of that. That is the most annoying thing ever. And then obviously, like the current political climate
Sure.
sucks. So there's the worries of what that could mean. But I think a lot of it is overlooked by just my day-to-day life, where it's like I got to deal with a lot all the time. Got a lot of shit on my plate always that I think, worried about how I look in the mirror or how flat my chest is, or, like if I could maybe get surgery at some point. It's kind of, it's kind of in the back of my mind. It's more like I have a lot of other things to do, and I have a very good support system. And so for that, it is very easy to kind of overlook some of the other struggles. Like even when I got called slurs the other day, it was like, well, this sucks. I still have to make dinner. Oh well, And so it's not the most impossible thing to do.
Yeah, you have to kind of be resilient with the daily grind.
Yeah, indeed.
But still, these are obviously important things, ultimately for you. And so, what is the adjustment like when you start taking testosterone, and what's sort of the time span? If is there a sort of start and finish date, or like a period of time, or is that kind of a lifelong?
It is a lifelong thing.
Okay.
I have to do this for the rest of my life if I want to.
Sure.
There are other ways to administer testosterone. I know that there is it's like a capsule that they like embed under your skin, and it's like it releases. It's only for like 3 months at a time though, so you have to take that out, get a new one in, and go to the doctor every time. That's a pain in my ass, literally, because it is put right above your butt. So I don't really want that. There's also a gel, which the only thing about that is the dosage can be off. It's absorbing into your body, so you have to make sure you just kind of the whole time until it's fully absorbed. You also should not be doing it if you have pets of any kind, because they will get it on them.
Absorb it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in terms of adjustment, doing the shot, I'm going to be honest. I don't know if my doctor that I used to have will ever see this, but as much as I loved her, she put me on the max dosage that you can put an adult on from the very start of taking testosterone, which is not what you should do. You should be tapering up, because that is kind of crazy. But, at the time I was like, at first I didn't know. And then a couple months in, I talked to my friends and I was like, so where do you guys pull the needle back to when you have to do your shot? And they were like, oh, I pull it back to the 0.5. And I was like, ooh, cool. I pull it back to the 1. They're like, you don't have any left over in your bottle? Because you could reuse the bottles. I was like, no. They tell me to inject all of it every 2 weeks. And they were like, you should not be doing that. And at the time I was like, what? What's really gonna happen, you guys? They're doing my blood work. It's fine. I said I wanted testosterone. She gave all of it to me. It's fine. I was extremely depressed though. That kind of hormone change, that quickly, is not good for your brain. So I was very depressed. I think one of the biggest changes after my mood finally stabilized was I know people say this, but oh my God, you crave meat. It's the most crazy craving ever. It's I need to eat as much protein as I can. My voice started to change a couple months in, just dropping here and there. And then I've only gotten the facial hair within the past year and a half, and it's really annoying. I don't know how you guys do it. I mean, it's something I'm glad I can complain about, but oh my God, does it ever even out? Or
I just don't deal with it. I just grow it, right?
Yeah, that's
touch it, really.
That's fair. But I mean, it was kind of there was not really much going on except for stuff in my head being kind of crazy, to just okay, well now your voice is just kind of, and then suddenly you're getting a bunch of hair on your stomach and your appetite is crazy, and I didn't notice the like fat redistribution on my body that much until a little bit later. Like it was still happening. It was just not something that I was like super aware of. But I definitely don't have like curvy hips like I used to, and I think my shoulders are a little bit more broad, which is fine. I'm not mad about that at all. But yeah, I mean, I would say it was seamless the second I didn't feel like I was in a depressive hole anymore. So overall, pretty good.
So it sounds like though that maybe, I mean, like you said, even there's still some changes recently, like facial hair, stuff like that. But would you say that maybe at this point, like a lot of the physicality or the physical adjustments have subsided somewhat, and is there then now more of a like psychological or emotional adjustments that you still?
Well, so
experience?
I think right now, it's like, okay, I still have like hair growing on my face, and it's gonna keep doing that, and it's definitely growing a lot more here and there. Like I have little hairs on my shoulder, and I'm like, that's fucking weird. I don't want that. And it's only on my shoulder. It's not the rest of my back. Whatever. Anyway, but I mean, for one, it's I think it's kind of plateaued, but there's also the aspect of like I could see my hair falling out in a couple years. I could start seeing like balding in a couple years, and that's it's based on the mother's side genetics. So it's probably going to happen. And I don't know. I've always said that when my hair starts to fall out and I start to bald, I'm going to shave my entire head and get head tattoos. So not worried about that. And then like mentally, it's been fine. I mean, I think part of that is also the fact that I did end up getting antidepressants a year and a half ago. It was something that I wanted to do when I was younger. After I turned 18, I don't know why, I just kind of stopped thinking about it. But a while ago, I was like, oh no, I probably shouldn't be thinking like this, the thoughts that I was having. And so I did go to the doctor, I got antidepressants, and I think like the thoughts that I was having I kind of had forever in terms of depression and anxiety, but the medication that I'm on now has definitely helped, and I don't think testosterone made it any worse either. I think the only mental struggle with testosterone is the fact that I don't really cry anymore, which is kind of sucks. I kind of miss crying as much as I used to. It's hard now to, when I feel sad, to like have a really good cry. It's not something I've done in a while. I can cry. It's maybe like 3 minutes, but it is not anywhere near what it used to be, which it just kind of makes me sad. I like to be able to feel so deeply about something, and I get worried now that it's like, well, I know I still feel deeply about it. I wish I could like make myself do the thing you're supposed to do, But other than that, it's all good.
I think that's a curse for a lot of men, and maybe even a misperception by people, is because we don't always show our emotions on our sleeve. You it seems like you don't feel them, and there's so many times even my kids or my partner will say like, well, clearly you don't care. It's like, no, I want to cry desperately.
Like,
I promise.
I
really am affected by this, but I'm not showing it. But yeah. So in situations, like you said the other day, where you had somebody use some slurs and stuff like that, obviously it's very tempting to want to rip their fucking head off and, just say anything. But all right, is there a part of you that ever comes from those experiences wanting to, if you were to talk to that person, face to face, like what would you say to them, if at all, like anything?
Well, the few interactions I've had that have been negative, I will say this one I did not choose to say anything about. I had said something to them. They were rolling by me. They were pointing and laughing. I flipped them off and I said, "Fuck you." They were driving their truck. It's 2 guys and 1 guy in the bed, and I was walking the opposite direction with my trash. They stopped and they started reversing. And that's when they said, you know, they were like, what'd you just say to me, queer? And they reversed all the way until I had put the trash into the trash can. And at that point, I was like, oh my God, they're going to get out of their car and they're going to beat me to death. You know, like that was the kind of thought I was having. But there have been times where I have said some not nice things back to people. I just think if you're willing to harass someone, then I will probably do it back. If you hold that much hate in your heart, then, like, I don't know. But I know it's never a good policy. With my grandma, even on the phone today, she was like, you gotta, like, hold yourself up a little bit higher. And I was like, I know, yeah, I know, but it kind of feels good to be mean back sometimes. Though, I mean, looking back at conversations I've had with people where they're not just outwardly calling me a slur. There was a woman who was shopping at Clover's, and she was asking me about my piercings and tattoos. And after I was telling her about it, because I was like, oh, you know, this is just someone who's curious, she was like, thank God I don't have a daughter like you. And looking back on it, I just wanted to be like, do you think this is like a normal way to talk to someone? Like, do you think this is like how a normal person should like talk to another human being? Like, why would you think that's appropriate at all? And that's kind of where a lot of my feelings go to when I am thinking of a response to something. It's just like, do you act like this always? Like, there's generally no need to be saying these kinds of things. And to do so, it's just kind of like, I don't really understand where you're coming from besides like anger and hatred.
That's what I was going to ask you now.
Yeah.
It's like, why do you think that they would speak to anyone that way? You know, much less you in that moment.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is like, I think a lot of people are just like not really aware of how the things they say affect other people. Is kind of what it has felt like at times, especially working a customer service job where I've had probably the worst things ever said to me. It's just like, are you wanting to be hurtful, or are you generally just like unaware of the impact you have on others? You know, and it's always kind of boggled me where it's like, there's the fact of, you know, maybe it's ignorance, maybe it's fear. People are scared of things they don't understand. Maybe it's just straight up hatred, you know, but it's not ever something that I'm going to fully understand. And I know that. And I know it's something that I will always encounter no matter where I am, anywhere in the world. And I do try to approach it the best I can when it is something like that, you know, where I think the end of that conversation was just going to be like, okay, I'm happy for you. Like, I don't really know what you want me to say. But, you know, like, going off of that, there was a woman who came up to me one day and told me about how her mom is a very, like, closed off person. She was raised in a very Republican area. And when she met me, she went and told her daughter that she met the guy who works at Clover's with all the piercings and tattoos and how nice he was and how that has changed her perception of how she sees other people. And this woman was telling me this and she was crying. She was like, the interaction you had with my mother is like, it's changed how she wants to approach other people. And it's like, that's the best I can do, honestly, is give someone the ability to like have a genuine conversation and realize like, oh, like I'm not a complete freaking weirdo. I'm not like an evil mastermind. I'm not like, I've been called like drug addict before because of the way I look. And it's like, you just choose to not get to know me as a person. And if you did, then I think that I'm a pretty nice guy. Like I try to be, you know, a very like thoughtful person. And I hope that I come across that way to others. So.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, that's
not to be all kumbaya and all this bullshit about it, but you know, to your point that you just said, you know, it is nice to counterbalance any sort of opposition or antagonism you would get with somebody that genuinely takes from it something that hopefully they carry for the rest of their life. I mean, wow, it's powerful.
I know. I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm gonna watch this. I'm gonna be like, oh Matt, you fucking cheese ball, god damn it. And it's like, but it's true. It's like, as much as I don't want to, I don't like to get super serious about things. I'm usually pretty carefree, or at least I try to be a lot of the time. It's like, yeah, these are the things that I do actually think and feel in terms of how I interact with other people in the world. And as hippy dippy as it might sound, it's like I do think everyone is deserving of some kind of genuine connection with other human beings. And
Absolutely.
so yeah.